Alright, today we are going to talk about something that came out of my Powered by the Apocalypse 30-day challenge, and I knew there would be some items, and this is a big one. This being the solo conversation. Let's talk about it. Welcome back to the channel. This is the Sacred Art of Gaming, where we love discovering new games, telling great stories, building some amazing worlds, and then hacking apart some mechanics and discussing them. But today, we are going to talk about the solo conversation and how it's similar to the group play conversation and what we can pull from the group play conversation into our solo play to make that more clear. I had this epiphany, let's say, usually when I'm at work or in the shower or on a run. And I don't know exactly what prompted this, but I just started doodling. And this is my best attempt at a doodle. And I'm sorry, the blue probably was a bit much. Maybe I should have continued with my initial thought, which was to not color around the words. But I started to think about how I solo play and how my solo plays can be better and when it really feels like I'm cooking, and then how that compares to like a group play game. And Powered by the Apocalypse in a lot of ways did help me with that, as well as Forged in the Dark. So imagine, if you will, you're at a group table where you are playing a group game where there's typically going to be a conversation between you and the other players and the GM. And to kind of simplify things a little bit, typically what will happen is you show up for game night. Let's say you don't have an action item, you're waiting for the GM. It's maybe session 1 or whatever. And the GM says something along the lines of, okay, so you are in the town, and you're in the town, and maybe it is springtime. It's springtime. It's a fantasy world, of course, because that's what most people are playing. And as the ice is thawing out, undead are coming out of the ice, and they are attacking the people in the town. What do? They'd probably do a better job than that, but I just pulled that out of thin air. There would be descriptive language, of course, but that is the start of the conversation in the fiction. And typically what would happen is then the players would be like, ooh, are they moving slowly because they just got thawed out? Are they still thawing out? Is there anyone who's immediately in danger? Of the people that are immediately in danger, are any of them women or children? Maybe my favorite blacksmith, is their shop under attack? Like, what is the immediate threat? Like, where are they coming from? Is there a choke point? They're gonna ask all these questions. And the GM will answer those questions with some form of a yes or no answer. This may be less so, this next layer, but let's say the players, they come up with a plan now that they've got all of their questions answered, and they begin fighting the undead. And as they're in the middle of fighting the undead, whether the GM decided it or rolled randomly on it, or something a player did sparked it in the GM's mind, but something happens. Something happens, and maybe it is, you find out that there's some cult within the town, and they actually wanted these undead to do this. And maybe you see that they're performing a ritual on a nearby roof. That being like the spark, the oracle, an additional complication to the situation. And depending on the type of system that you're playing, that complication could be baked right into the rules. I'm sure they would have been doing skill checks as they were already fighting, but now let's say with that, you now have a skill check of, all right, the door is locked, they're on the roof. Maybe someone is trying to pick the lock to get to this cult before they make things any worse, while someone else is actually climbing the outside. And those may result in some form of skill check, a thievery, a lock picking, climbing, etc. Athletics, whatever the skill system is that exists in that game. So that being group play in a nutshell. And I kind of envision that as a game of ping pong. The GM, describes the situation, the zombies with, maybe it's fall time, there's still snow, but it's starting to thaw. I say fall, spring. It's springtime. It's the start of spring. Things are starting to come around, but there's still a little bit of a briskness to the air. So as the GM describes all that, hits the ping pong ball over to the players. The players take that information, they absorb it, and they ask their questions. They hit it back. The GM answers those questions to further solidify the scene that is taking place. GM hits it back. In this case, the players would be acting on this, I'm sure, so that would be like the skill checks and stuff. Maybe, depending on, if there's stakes involved. And then the inevitable randomness. Again, GM hitting the ball back. Now, and then the skill checks, you get the idea. Now, in this scenario, what I was kind of envisioning with ping pong, and the reason why I chose ping pong, is that you can flip the table, half of it. You can flip the whole table, but in this scenario, we're only gonna flip half. So this way, you could hit the ball against the other side. And the reason why I bring this up is that it may help you in the same struggle that I occasionally have. Because this can be flipped for me in a lot of ways. So a lot of times I may actually be depending on skill checks, and I find that I'm depending on the skill checks and the oracles and the yes-no follow-ups whenever I did not properly set the scene. And sometimes I'm just, I come from a land where the GM likes to get the players to roll some dice. And I apply that to my solo play, maybe more so than I should. Not that it's wrong, but I find that I do have a better time when the scene is set up properly. And this was really showcased with Powered by the Apocalypse and Forged in the Dark, because if you don't do that and you need to figure out consequences, it can be difficult. And if it's difficult, then maybe you shouldn't have rolled. So you kind of have to think about why. Like my urge to roll gets kind of put on blast with Powered by the Apocalypse, and maybe that is part of my friction, but I'm learning lessons from it, which is good. So in this scenario, it may not be to scale, but I would like to think that the conversation being the bulk of this. So you are now playing solo by yourself, and you're hitting the ball against this side of the table, and you start by hitting the conversation, the fiction being the bulk. You want to set that up, your opening scene. That is going to lay the foundation. Games like Starforged and Ironsworn, they do a lot of like world building too, which I think sometimes can be too much, and it's optional, it's not like you have to do all of it, but that also does a great job of like setting the initial foundation of what the adventure is built on. And then once you have that initial scene, you hit the ball, and then you're hitting this next layer, follow-up, yes or no, that being the blue that maybe is not as easy to see. So you further solidify what is going on, and sometimes it may be obvious, and other times it may not be. And instead of asking a GM who was not there, you would get like a yes or no or some version of that. No, but, yes, and etc. And then you hit the ball back another time if you continue to need more information, or you want to add in a level of randomness so that you don't feel like you're telling a story and you feel like you are not in control, which I personally love, but it can get a little crazy if you do it too much. That being your oracles and your spark tables. Using things like Mythic, using things like O, because there's some uncertainty there. You want to know a random thing that you don't have control over, whether it's a random scene, whether it's a random action from a PC, whether it's the randomness within the room. And then, lastly, once you have all of this information, I'm probably bad at this, I do a lot of skill checks, and maybe I should do less of them, especially in solo play. But I mean, it's fine, I'm having fun. In Powered by the Apocalypse, I mean, things can go south or Forged in the Dark if you do too many skill checks. So now you have all that information, you now know what is at stake. And if there's anything at stake. If there's not anything at stake, then you kind of just do the thing and you keep going. Powered by the Apocalypse will trigger once something is done with stakes involved. Because if you're doing it and there's not stakes, then you kind of have to figure it out, and then you're adding harm when there really doesn't need to be. Ideally, and it's not always going to be this way, but you're kind of hitting the ball ping, 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 and then maybe you go back to the top to some degree if you're going to a new room, or maybe more follow-up or etc. But generally speaking, you kind of like build down on that side of the ping pong table and you continue to hit to the other side. Difference being, there's not a person there, so sometimes you roll dice, but not always. If the answer is unclear, you roll dice. Or you want that extra little bit of randomness, you roll dice. Whether it's an oracle, yes, no, or a skill check. Now, I wrote a note because I think this was a good lesson for me, and I want to share it with you. I'll even show it to you. It's here. Am I asking the oracle because I'm uncertain or because I feel guilty? Guilty in terms of I feel like I have too much control and I feel like I'm making things too easy on myself as a solo player. So I will say that again. Am I asking the oracle because I am uncertain or because I feel guilty? If it's because I feel guilty and I feel like I'm making things too easy on myself, that's kind of silly and I can ignore that voice. Or if I want to give into it, sure, continue to roll. But I find that I have better results if I roll less. And usually that's when things are really established. That's when I've got, not to use another analogy, but when I've got a good fire going. You've got you've got your kindling, you've got your sticks, and everything is consistent. You got too much kindling, it burns out too fast. You don't have a good foundation, or maybe you don't have enough kindling and the wood is just not catching. You want a fire that will last, like Survivor where they cut the rope. You want something that'll last. So that's when I feel really good, and that's when I feel like I'm able to answer the most questions myself. And that's okay, because I'm just making logical leaps based off of what exists already. So, am I asking the oracle because I'm uncertain? If I truly am uncertain, then I ask yes, no. Then I ask an oracle or spark table. Or in some cases, a skill check with perception, investigation, awareness. Sometimes you can get more, I mean, that wouldn't give you the answer, but that kind of prompts getting answers. And sometimes I do that. History, knowledge, those can also do it, studying. So those are my thoughts. I wanted to share them with you while they were fresh in my brain because I just sketched that up and I don't know, I felt like it was a good lesson for me going through that Powered by the Apocalypse journey. So yeah, those are my thoughts. What is your process like for solo play and how does it compare to group play? And do you have any advice for other people solo playing? I'd love to hear about it down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, do all the fun YouTube things, hype and whatever else. And I will see you in the next one as we continue to explore the sacred art of gaming together.